Good evening, and welcome to Election Night in America 2024, where current Mayor of South Bend, Pete Buttigieg, will be taking on Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. It is now 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and poll closings in the states of Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia. In Georgia, with 31% of the vote in, that is too close to call. Ron DeSantis leads by about 11,000 votes there. In Indiana, 11 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Kentucky, 8 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In South Carolina, 9 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Vermont, 3 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. And in Virginia, 13 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. This now puts Pete Buttigieg at 16 electoral votes and Ron DeSantis at 28 electoral votes. It is now 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast, and poll closings in the states of North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia. In North Carolina, with 28% of the vote in, that is too close to call. Ron DeSantis leads by about 33,000 votes there. And in Ohio, that is also too close to call, with 32% of the vote in. Ron DeSantis leads by about 42,000 votes there. In West Virginia, with 4 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. And in Georgia, that remains too close to call, with now 35% of the vote in. Ron DeSantis still has a lead by about 3,000 votes. This now puts Ron DeSantis at 32 electoral votes and Pete Buttigieg at 16 electoral votes. It is now 8 p.m. on the East Coast, and poll closings in the states of Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, the District of Columbia, Florida, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Tennessee. In Alabama, 9 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Connecticut, 7 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. In Delaware, 3 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. In the District of Columbia, 3 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. In Florida, 30 electoral votes, that is too close to call it, 42% of the vote in. Ron DeSantis leads by about 22,000 votes there. 32,000 votes there. In Illinois, 19 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. In Maine, 3 out of the 4 electoral votes are going to Pete Buttigieg. But in the 2nd congressional district, that remains too close to call. Pete Buttigieg leads by about 1,000 votes there. In Maryland, 10 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. In Massachusetts, 11 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. In Mississippi, 6 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Missouri, 10 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In New Hampshire, 4 electoral votes, that is too close to call, with 16% of the vote in. Ron DeSantis leads by about 11,000 votes there. In New Jersey, 14 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. In Oklahoma, 7 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes, that is too close to call, with 34% of the vote in. Pete Buttigieg leads by about 33,000 votes there. In Rhode Island, 4 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. And lastly, in Tennessee, 11 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. This now puts Pete Buttigieg at 91 electoral votes and Ron DeSantis at 76 electoral votes. It is now 8:30 on the East Coast, and poll closings in just the state of Arkansas. In Arkansas, 6 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Georgia, that still remains too close to call, with now 43% of the vote in. Ron DeSantis leads by about 2,000 votes there. In North Carolina, with 37% of the vote in, Ron DeSantis is still leading by about 30,000 votes there. In Ohio, with 38% of the vote in, Ron DeSantis leads by about 100,000 votes there. In Florida, with 49% of the vote in, Ron DeSantis leads by about 70,000 votes there. In Maine's 2nd congressional district, still too close to call as well, with 36% of the vote in, Ron DeSantis leads by about 2,000 votes. In New Hampshire, 4 electoral votes, with 29% of the vote in, Ron DeSantis still leads by about 2,000 votes. And in Pennsylvania, with 41% of the vote in, Pete Buttigieg remains the leader by 14,000 votes. This now puts Ron DeSantis at 82 electoral votes, while Pete Buttigieg is still at 91 electoral votes. It is now 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and poll closings in the states of Arizona, Colorado, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, New Mexico, New York, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. In Arizona, with 29% of the vote in, Pete Buttigieg is losing there by about 8,000 votes. In Colorado, with 22% of the vote in, Pete Buttigieg is leading there by about 17,000 votes. In Kansas, 6 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Louisiana, 8 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Michigan, 15 electoral votes going. Well, that's too close to call with 36% of the vote in. Ron DeSantis leads by about 10,000 votes there. In Minnesota, with 27% of the vote in, that is too close to call. Ron DeSantis leads by about 16,000 votes there. In Nebraska, the popular vote is going to Ron DeSantis. In Nebraska's 1st congressional district, going to Ron DeSantis. But in Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, going to Pete Buttigieg. And in Nebraska's 3rd congressional district, 1 electoral vote going to Ron DeSantis. In New Mexico, 5 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. In New York, 28 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. In North Dakota, 3 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In South Dakota, 3 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Texas, 40 electoral votes. That is too close to call with 33% of the vote in. Ron DeSantis leads by about 50,000 votes there. And in Wisconsin, also too close to call with 26% of the vote in. Pete Buttigieg leads by about 19,000 votes there. And lastly, in Wyoming, 3 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. This now puts Ron DeSantis at 109 electoral votes and Pete Buttigieg at 126 electoral votes. We can now project that in Ohio, with now 52% of the vote in, Ron DeSantis will win its 17 electoral votes. This now puts him and Pete Buttigieg both at 126 electoral votes. It is now 10 p.m. on the East Coast, and poll closings in the states of Iowa, Montana, Nevada, and Utah. In Wyoming, 3 electoral votes. Sorry about that. In Iowa, 6 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Montana, 4 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Nevada, 6 electoral votes. That is too close to call with 13% of the vote in. Pete Buttigieg leads by about 1,000 votes there. And lastly, in Utah, 6 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. And we can also project that in New Hampshire, with 57% of the vote in, it will be going to Pete Buttigieg. That's 4 electoral votes. This now puts Pete Buttigieg at 130 electoral votes and Ron DeSantis at 142 electoral votes. It is now 11 p.m. on the East Coast, and the poll closings in the states of California, Hawaii, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. In California, 54 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. In Hawaii, 4 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. In Idaho, 4 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Oregon, 8 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. And in Washington, 12 electoral votes going to Pete Buttigieg. And we can make a projection in Colorado with 63% of the vote in. We can now project that Pete Buttigieg will win its 10 electoral votes. And another state that Pete Buttigieg will win, Minnesota, with 48% of the vote in. Pete Buttigieg will also win its 10 electoral votes. And in Florida, we can project that Ron DeSantis will win its 30 electoral votes with 74% of the vote in. Of course, he is the governor of that state. This now puts Pete Buttigieg at 227 electoral votes and Ron DeSantis at 175 electoral votes. We can now make projection in Texas, 40 electoral votes with 67% of the vote in. We can project that Ron DeSantis will win. In Nevada, 6 electoral votes. We can project that Pete Buttigieg will win it with 53% of the vote in. This now puts Ron DeSantis at 215 electoral votes and Pete Buttigieg at 231 electoral votes. It is now 1 a.m. on the East Coast. The poll closings in just the state of Alaska. In Alaska, 3 electoral votes going to Ron DeSantis. In Georgia, with 81% of the vote in, that remains too close to call. Ron DeSantis leads by about 30,000 votes there. In Maine's 2nd Congressional District, 1 electoral vote, that is still too close to call, with 78% of the vote in. Ron DeSantis leads by about 3,000 votes there. In Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes, with 75% of the vote in. Ron DeSantis leads by 30,000 votes, but that is still too close to call. In Arizona, 11 electoral votes, so that's too close to call, with 69% of the vote in. Ron DeSantis leads by about 11,000 votes there. In Wisconsin, 10 electoral votes, with 66% of the vote in. Pete Buttigieg leads there by about 21,000 votes. In North Carolina, 16 electoral votes. We can now project with 89% of the vote in, Ron DeSantis will win. And in Michigan, 15 electoral votes. We can project that Pete Buttigieg will win with 82% of the vote in. This now puts Pete Buttigieg at 246 electoral votes and Ron DeSantis at 234 electoral votes. We can now make 2 state calls in Arizona and Georgia. In Georgia, with 93% of the vote in, we can project that Ron DeSantis will win at 16 electoral votes. And in Arizona, we can also project Ron DeSantis will win. Its 11 electoral votes are called to Ron DeSantis with 83% of the vote in. And also in Maine's 2nd Congressional District, with 88% of the vote in, 1 electoral vote going to be awarded to Ron DeSantis. This now puts Ron DeSantis at 263 electoral votes and Pete Buttigieg at 246 electoral votes. We can now call the state of Wisconsin. With 99% of the vote in, Pete Buttigieg is the apparent winner of Wisconsin's 10 electoral votes. This now puts Pete Buttigieg at 256 electoral votes and Ron DeSantis at 263 electoral votes. We can now make the last state call, the state that depends on the election for both candidates, which is the state of Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, we can now project that Ron DeSantis will win its 19 electoral votes with 97% of the vote in. This means we can now project Ron DeSantis will be elected the President of the United States. He is the 47th President-elect. He will win this election 282 to 256. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe with the notification bell on for more videos like this one. I'll see you in the next video.